Hey, story fans! Ready for today's spooky lineup? We're starting with working in a former castle together with royal ghosts, where ancient walls have secrets and royal spirits aren't shy about making an appearance. Then, we'll dive into disturbing experience in a graveyard because what's a night without a little chill? Next up is Little Dude Who Followed Me Home, a tale that proves not every tag-along is as cute as you'd hope. And finally, we've got Don't Go Into the Fairy Ring, a story that'll have you thinking twice before stepping into any mysterious circles. Grab your favorite blanket, settle in, and let's get into it. Story name: Working in a former castle among royal ghosts, shared by Pummel Saf. This happened towards the end of December 2021, when I worked as a security guard at the former castle of Augustus Roman II of Saxony. We had it closed down due to the usual reason, and there wasn't much going on. To be honest, it was pretty quiet. Most of my colleagues and I would come in because we were needed to supervise the maintenance workers fixing electrical systems like lights and chandeliers. Since no one else was allowed inside the castle during this time, the workers could work without any distractions. As security guards, we ended up spending a lot of hours just standing around watching them do their job, which sometimes didn't even happen. The winter weather made it dark very early on, making long walks through the castle's vast halls feel eerie and lonely. But what really sent chills down my spine was what happened in the antechambers and throne room of Augustus Roman II. These areas were the real highlights, decked out in gold ornaments and deep red carpets that covered every wall. They'd been painstakingly restored after most of them were damaged during World War II. The first hall had an enormous iron door at the entrance, separating the private chambers from the rest of the museum. I once had a shift where I was responsible for locking up the west side of the second floor, which included the tower room and the end of the chambers. Everything seemed normal until I stopped in the second antechamber right before the throne room. That's when I heard footsteps coming from the exact other side of the wall. What freaked me out was that it was the former dressing room of Augustus Roman II himself, as well as some of his wives' dresses. The rooms originally led to the bedroom, but they were separated by a massive oak door that was incredibly heavy and made a lot of noise when you tried to open it. So I hear those footsteps, and I turn around, looking into the first antechamber, but there's nothing there. The iron door is still closed, so I decide to check out the garderobe room around the corner. Maybe someone from the castle snuck in through a fire exit to look for something. But when I search the whole area, including every nook and cranny, I find nothing. So I went back into the throne room, and just as I entered, I heard those footsteps again. But this time, they were coming from one of the garderobe rooms and straight into the bedroom. The bedroom was separated by that massive oak door that was already closed. I rushed in to check it out, but there was nobody there. It was like the steps had just vanished into thin air. I came back out and told one of my co-workers who was waiting outside that we needed to turn on the alarm system. I also asked him if he saw anyone coming out of the exhibit, but he said no. He did tell me, though, that this isn't the first time someone's reported hearing footsteps in these rooms. In fact, a few other security guards have had similar experiences and can't explain what's going on. One of them joked that some people believe Augustus Roman II is still wandering around his golden chambers, making sure we're protecting them the way he wants us to. Story name: Disturbing experience in a graveyard, shared by Atticus Joyful. This is my first post in Reddit. I'm 36 years old and I'm French. My English may not be perfect, but I'll do my best. Thanks for your understanding. Back in 2003, I used to receive some email chain containing many weird and old pictures that were supposed to show ghosts. I've never seen that before, so I was both scared and curiously attracted at the same time. I did a search on the web to find how to try to take some ghost pictures by myself, and I found a blog that gave me some advices. So one day, I decided to ask my stepfather to lend me a digital camera. It was a Friday evening. We were in March or April. My friends and I used to hang out in a castle that belongs to the municipality. Yes, that town was awesome and that part of my life was priceless, where lots of kids from the town used to play music or just chill and play games with the community workers. It was around 10 p.m. I was with one good friend, and on our way to come back home we had a walk past to the town graveyard. I told him I wanted to try to take some ghost pictures tonight, and he was okay to come with me. In front of the graveyard we met my little brother and 4 friends of him. They were coming back home too, and they were chatting on a bench. They asked us what we were doing, and I decided to tell us the truth. They were very enthusiastic, and they asked me if they could come with us. This idea didn't very please me, but I said yes on one condition: they had to follow my instructions. They were all okay, and I told them that when we'll be inside the graveyard, we all have to be quiet, respectful, and aware of every strange feeling we could have. If someone feels something, just make me a sign and show me the direction so I can take a picture with the camera flash on. Then we all passed over the barrier and began to walk through the graveyard. The graveyard was divided into 2 parts, one old and creepy and one recent and pretty normal. I decided to go to the old part because there were a lot of statues and paths surrounded by large fir trees. It was creepy by itself. We walked between the graves, through the paths. Everything around us was very scary. But after a while and some random pictures, nobody felt anything weird. So we decided to come back to the recent part to go outside of the graveyard and come back home. On our way to the barrier, we were more relaxed and started to chat quietly and laugh a little bit. The pressure has faded away. We were walking with new graves on our left side when something very strange happened. My brother turned to me. He was white as a sheet and tears were running on his cheeks. He said, "Take a picture. She's right there." I was confused and I took a picture as fast as I could in the direction he showed me. After that, nobody said a word until we got out of the graveyard. Everybody was stunned and frightened. When we were out, we started to talk. My brother said he didn't know what happened. He did not see anything, but he had a very powerful feeling that there was a woman just right where he showed me, and that the feeling was so strange that some tears began to fall. We said goodnight to his friends and we came back to our house with my brother and my friend. Once we got home, we wanted to see the pictures, so I connected the camera to my computer. My mother and my stepfather were still awake, so they came to see the pictures too. The first pictures were just some statues, old graves, and there were nothing interesting. The only curious thing was the last picture, the picture my brother asked me to take. It was a new grave, with a lot of flowers on it, but behind that grave there was something unusual. There was a white shape, not like a light or something. It was made of white thick smoke, but rich in details. We could see a woman. She was smaller on her knees. She was wearing a large dress. She had long hair and her head down. Her hair were hiding half of her face. We all saw her in the picture at the same time, and we were shocked and scared. Except for my stepfather, who immediately said that this was a prank and started to laugh. We could all see the woman. There were every details, like a normal person, but made of thin and dense smoke. He could see her too, but he didn't want to admit that a thing like that could be possible. After that, I saved the picture on a floppy disk, Remember 2003? We talked and tried to change our mind, and after a while my friend went back to his house and everyone were going to bed. It was one of the worst nights I've ever had. I was sweating, shaking, thinking about the woman in the picture. I know it was only in my head, but I'm pretty sure that between two dreams I felt something trying to pull my blanket. Anyway, I don't think this detail is important. I was just scared. The next day, I took the floppy disk and decided to show the picture to everyone in the castle. So I came out of the house, and on my way to the castle, I went in front of the graveyard. This time it was daylight and my curiosity was stronger than my fear. I had to know who were on that grave. So I walked into the graveyard. I found the grave and it was a man. Apparently, he was a football coach. So I checked the graves next to his, the place where the woman stood. It was a baby. He died at less than 1 year old. So I was a little bit confused and I went to next grave. And then there was the creepiest thing. It was a woman who died the year before. Everyone in town knew her story because it was one of the most traumatic facts that happened last year's. She was in a car with her husband and her daughter. The father was driving in a little road next to my town. He stopped the car on the side of the road. I don't know why, but the woman got out of the car. Maybe he wanted her to drive the car. So she walked around the car, but the car was parked in a sharp bend a little way down the top of a hill. Some young guys who were driving way too fast didn't see her. She was instantly hit and cut in half before the eyes of her family. Horrible story. That's why everyone knew her. It was chilling. I came out of the graveyard faster than I came in, with lots of scenarios in my head. I finally went to the castle and showed the picture to the guys who were near the computer and didn't say anything. Everyone saw the woman, but they all reacted like my stepfather. They started to laugh and said that it was a fake picture, that it was a prank. I didn't mind. The fact that they saw the woman on the picture proved that there's very something. Whatever it is, everyone saw it. I kept showing the picture to everyone I know. Only a few people believed me, but they all saw a woman too. Only my friend, my brother and his friends know what really happened that night. The real circumstances of the picture, my brother and the tears. This is one of the most disturbing part of the story. I think you all want to see the picture, and I swear I want to show it to you too. But back in 2003 when I showed the picture to everyone with my floppy disk, I lent it to an ex-girlfriend so she could show the picture to her family. But she never gave it back to me. I truly regret to be unable to keep showing this picture to everyone, because it was the most accurate ghost or spirit picture I've ever seen, especially if you know what happened just before with my brother, and who were in the graves where the shape was. Since that day, I'm truly convinced that there are things that we cannot explain. Whatever it is real. This story keeps haunting me 18 years later. If anyone had seen or lived anything like that, please let me know. Thank you for reading. Story name: The Little Being Who Followed Me Home, shared by Fuzzy Balls McCracken. In early 2014, something strange happened in Tucumgur, a small town near Los Angeles, California. It was like the first of many things that occurred when I stayed there. This place, with its dark and mysterious energy called the Veil, helps the property developer stay away. I ride horses and have an amazing horse that needs lots of care. At the time, I kept him at a wonderful little barn near my apartment in Tucumgur. In simple words, I'm 5'9" tall, very athletic, like a cowboy, ride horses, and believe in guns. My personality is kind of like what you'd expect from an American girl who loves guns and thinks she's super tough. I grew up in Kentucky, love old cars, drive a big Dodge truck with a history. and don't shy away from any situation. I feel very confident and strong, like I can handle anything, and am very politically active like Bernie Sanders. It's like I believe I could have won Fear Factor. I'd often be the last one to leave the barn at night and shut off all the lights, making it completely dark. To be honest, darkness never bothered me, and sometimes I'd go for hikes alone under the stars on the fire roads. For months, this really horrible person who claimed to be a horse trainer was keeping my beautiful horse, Irish, locked up in a tiny, miserable stall at the back of the property. He was in constant pain because of a serious health issue called laminitis. Just thinking about it makes me angry and sad all over again. I spent every single night with him, talking to him, holding his head and neck, trying to comfort him because I knew he was suffering. He was an incredibly wise and kind horse, and I could tell he just wanted someone to talk to, but mostly, he was trying to comfort me when I was feeling so down about the whole situation. Even thinking about it now is making my eyes water. It really hurt me a lot back then. A group of us asked this woman about putting him down, but she refused, and the animal control guys didn't help us at all. It was just so unfair to keep that horse in pain and isolated like that. If I ever get a serious illness myself, maybe I'll look her up and make sure she's dead for what she did. One night, I went out to take care of my own horse and I found Irish's stall empty. He had finally been put down. Thank God. I was so relieved. A weight lifted off my shoulders and I imagined him in the next world, young and free again. I spent time with my other horse, taking care of his needs, but it wasn't the same as being with Irish. As usual, I was the last one there around 9:30 p.m. I walked down to the horse corrals and turned off the lights, making the whole farm pitch black, just like always. But this time, something felt different. Every inch of my body was on high alert, filled with adrenaline. Something was in the area with me. I was frozen, listening intently for any sounds, but it was hard to tell because the horses were making their usual noises and moving around in their stalls. I slowly reached under my sports bra for the switchblade I kept there, just in case. My instincts were screaming that something was behind me, near Irish's old stall. I knew it could be a mountain lion, but the horses would have reacted by now if they smelled one. It had to be someone else, probably some crazy person from the river wash who might come to steal or hurt me when the lights went out. But it didn't feel like that. It felt off, not human. I took a deep breath and said, "What's up, motherfucker? You wanna mess with me? Let's go." There was no response. I'm pretty sure this wasn't a human being. I freaked out inside and tried to move quietly down the little road, sticking close to the sheds and avoiding the main part of the road. But at that moment, I had a new truck, a huge F-150, and I quickly grabbed my keys and turned on all the lights with the remote, just in case something was following me. I got into the truck and locked it down, then sped out of the dirt lot like crazy. To be honest, I didn't feel like driving home that night. I just drove around the neighborhood a few times, trying to calm myself down, and told myself I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was off. So eventually, I parked the truck and went upstairs to my apartment. My roommate was already asleep with her door closed, so I went to bed too. My old cat woke me up a few times during the night, but it was always just to go to the bathroom or complain about being hungry. It wasn't until much later that another, older rescue cat of mine started growling loudly at the bedroom door like it was trying to protect me from someone. I had some really weird dreams that night, but one of them stuck with me. I dreamed we got a tiny, invisible spirit that looked like something out of a bad movie. It was about 3 feet tall, super skinny legs, huge feet, and pointy ears on its head. Its arms were like claws, and it was just plain nasty looking. The next morning, I called my roommate on the way to work because I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I didn't want to freak her out, so I just asked how she slept in a totally casual way. And then she tells me she had the worst nightmares ever, about some tiny, creepy spirit moving into our apartment and we couldn't get rid of it. When she said that, I almost crashed my car because it was exactly what I dreamed up the night before. I told my roommate everything that had happened the night before, and she was really shocked. I said I'd call my friend Will, who's into alternative medicine, to see what he thought. Will explained some weird thing from Eastern traditions about souls that die in pain being reincarnated as negative entities with a lot of anger and injustice. So basically, if you think about it, the beautiful horse Irish who died was somehow turned into this tiny, creepy little guy who's attached himself to me and is trying to follow me home. That's just messed up. I asked Will to explain what we should do next, and he suggested we do a standard burning of sage thing that people do when they think their apartment is haunted. I have no idea why it works, but we did it anyway. We were both super uncomfortable in the flat, and the cats were being really agitated. Will told us to do some kind of meditation before bed that's supposed to get rid of negative energy. It involves imagining your body filled with pure white light, then filling your aura with that light, then your room, your town, California, the whole state, the entire country, and finally the whole universe. The idea is to fill everything with this light and push the creepy entity out. It sounded like some kind of woo-woo nonsense, but honestly it felt really comforting and nice to do. It was actually kind of soothing to imagine all that positive energy surrounding us and pushing the bad stuff away. The next day everything seemed to go back to normal. The cats woke up, and we didn't have any bad dreams again. What's been bugging me about this whole experience is that it made me think about some pretty dark stuff. It wasn't just the idea of a creepy little spirit moving into my apartment or messing with my head. It was the thought that there's no justice in the universe, that people are just running around being cruel and heartless. I'm an atheist Jew, but this experience made me realize that I've always secretly hoped for something better, that there's some kind of fundamental goodness in the world. But now I'm not so sure. It feels like the universe is just one big mess, a place where people are more concerned with being cruel than doing any good. It's really unsettling to think about it, and it's got me thinking about all the people I care about who might be like that too, my grandparents, my mom, even my old pets. What if they are not what we thought they were? It's a pretty terrifying thought. That's basically my paranormal story. Sorry for going on and on. I don't know why I'm so verbose sometimes. I just am. And yeah, I'm sorry for all the swearing too. Story name. Don't go into the fairy ring. Shared by unknown public. I was driving down a dirt road one night on the way to visit my cousin who lived in the city of Fernhallow. Local legend said that the road ran right through the center of a large fairy ring which would appear during the rainy season. I had been riding through that stretch of land at least once a month for my entire 32 years of existence and had never seen anything strange. The only thing remotely unusual was a large ancient 6-foot obelisk with odd runes on it. There was also the ruins of an old castle and village that burned down in 1008 out of 50. It was around 10:30 at night, and suddenly, a deer charged out into the road right in front of me. I slammed on the brakes and lost control of the car, sending the car careening into a tree. The airbag deployed, and I blacked out. When I came to, I grabbed my purse and stepped out of the car. Miraculously, I was not hurt. I looked and saw my car, now a crumpled up steel mass, wrapped around a tree trunk. I breathed a sigh of relief that I had not been hurt, and took my phone out of the purse. I took my phone out of my purse and dialed 911. 911, may I have your emergency? The 911 dispatcher asked. Yes, I crashed my car into a tree, I answered. Excuse me, I think you are breaking up. The 911 dispatcher said. I got into an accident and crashed my car into a tree. I said, look, if this is a joke, it isn't funny. Prank calling 911 is a crime, the dispatcher said, a voice sounding both frightened and angry at the same time. Prank. This isn't a prank. I just wrecked my car. I need help. Oh wow, that's freaky, the dispatcher said. It sounded as if she had pulled the phone away from her mouth. I was absolutely enraged by this point. Jack, come hear this voice on the line. She yelled to someone. Hello? A man's voice asked. My name is Caitlin Donohue, and I need to file an accident report. I yelled. Whoa, that's weird, he said. I heard a clunk on the other end. Hello? I asked. No one answered. Hello? I yelled. Still no one answered. They had hung up on me. I called my mother, but she did not answer, so I left her a voicemail. The phone rang and I answered it. Hello? I said. There was a pause and a puff of air like someone breathing into the receiver. Mommy? A child's voice asked. I didn't have any kids. No, sweetie, I'm not your mommy, I said. Mum, my. The child whimpered. The child hung up. I then got a text message which read, my name is Gretchen. Can you give my ex-boyfriend Jason a message for me? Tell him I am going to beat his butt for cheating on me with Derrier. This one got me scared. No, you fight your own boyfriend. I texted back. Can't, I'm dead. You are alive. Then a bunch of little angry face emojis flashed across the screen. The phone rang again. Hello? I asked. There was a pause. I'm coming. A gravely voice growled. The sound of the voice made every hair on my body stand on end. Who are you? I whimpered. Suddenly someone tapped me on the shoulder. I screamed at the top of my lungs, turned and saw an elderly gentleman standing behind me. Relief washed over me. Hi, you need a ride to the next village, he asked. I was relieved that someone had found me. He stood beside a horse-drawn cart. I assumed that he was one of the country farm workers. Yes. Thank you so much, I said. I tried to call the police, but they didn't seem to want to talk to me. I continued. He replied, yes, that seems to happen a lot around here. Bad reception. I climbed aboard the cart. My name is James, by the way, he said. My name is Caitlin. James climbed aboard and snapped the reins. We trotted off down the dirt road, which was quite a new experience for me since I had never ridden a horse or been in a carriage. I'd seen a towing company in one of the nearby villages. Perhaps we can contact them in the morning about your car, he said. Then a thought occurred to me. The next village was not for at least 100 miles. The next village isn't for 100 miles. It is where my cousin lives, I said. No, my village is right up here, he said. He can't be thinking of the old ruins of what used to be a village. I thought. My phone rang again, but this time I did not answer. I looked it and did not recognize the number. A while later, we rode over a hill. At the foot of that hill, in the place of the ruin, was an old stone castle surrounded by a small village. All of the lights in the village were dark, save for the castle where bright lights blazed forth from every room. But that village burned down in 1850. It can't have been suddenly rebuilt over the past month since I drove to see my cousin last. I said. James said, "What do you mean you think it burned down? I will tell you about that fire. The whole village was lit up in flames one night and suddenly there was a huge rainstorm and the fire was out. There was a huge rainstorm and the fire went out, but the villagers all perished and it burned to the ground." I said. Or did it? It all seemed a bit hazy now. I must have hit my head really hard during that accident. The sooner I was able to fix my car and see a doctor, the better. In fact, tonight is the anniversary of that fire, and Prince Finian always has a ball to celebrate. James said. He invites all of the villagers. I'm sure he would love it if you joined us this evening, he said. My heart gave a leap. I had never even been to a ball before. I would love to, I said, smiling. We rode through the village and stopped at the imposing edifice of the stone castle. A young butler was waiting outside. James said to him, "This is Caitlin. She is going to be staying in our village for this evening." The butler looked her over with his eyes. "Well, let me see if the Danielle has any more dresses from her shop to lend to you. Come stand inside here," he said. He opened the door and the three of them walked inside. Suddenly, I had to use the restroom very badly. "Excuse me, where's the restroom?" I asked. The butler led me to the door where he said the restroom was. I went inside and discovered that the toilet was very old-fashioned with a pull, but it still had some sort of indoor plumbing. When I was done, I walked outside and saw that I was completely alone in the hallway, save for an odd and intoxicating sort of singing I heard coming from down the hall. I followed the singing and went to the door of a room. I opened the door and saw no one. I walked inside and the door slammed shut behind me. Terrified, I looked around me, but saw that I was alone in the room. On the bed was a rock with the same odd runes that were on the stone that stood alongside the road. Curious, I picked up the rock and traced the runes with my finger. Suddenly a blinding light shone forth from them, and the rosebush that was sitting on the balcony shook. My heart throbbed in terror as suddenly a beautiful woman in a bright red dress just floated out of the bush and into the room. "WH, who are you?" I asked. The woman grinned and said, "I am Rosetta, the fairy who lives in the bush." The woman said, "Fairy?" I stammered. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you." I continued. The fairy laughed a high musical laugh. "Disturbed me. I summoned you up here by making you have to use the restroom." My heart was fluttering with excitement by then. I believed that fairy godmothers were the stuff of stories. "At fairy godmothers just the stuff of stories?" She laughed. "Of course not. Godmothers. Yes. A fairy would never lower themselves to being anyone's servant. Fairies select kings and queens of countries." The fairy snapped. "You are so queenly looking. What royalty are you related to?" she asked. I burst out laughing. "I am not related to any royalty. My mother worked at Harbor Freight and my father worked at McDonald's." I said, "That's ridiculous. You must mean that your mother was the Lady of Freight Harbor and your father was Sir Donald, Knight of Hamburg." "No, they weren't," I said. "Well, No future queen can go to the ball in those rags now, can they? She said. Personally, I didn't think there was anything wrong with my clothing. My phone rang in my purse again. I took it out to turn it off. I saw a ton of text messages and missed call numbers on the screen that I did not recognize. I scrolled through them to see if any of them were from my mother. None were. Some of the messages were downright terrifying. Are you getting texts and phone calls from the dead? The fairy asked. How did you know? I replied, I can see the texts. The fairy said, it occurred to me that she really was standing right in front of me. I also am a fairy, and we cross between the world of the living and the afterlife. Did you happen to have a near-death experience, like your life flashed before your eyes or something? She asked. Yeah, I crashed into a tree and badly damaged my car. I replied, I can stop those texts for you. When someone either dies or comes close to death, the dead can communicate with them and contact them by phone. Oh, please do stop these strange calls, I said relievedly as I handed my phone to her. She changed the keyboard to the strange runes and typed something into the phone. Then she handed the phone to me. What is your favorite color? She asked. Pink, I replied. Suddenly, I was engulfed in a cloud of pink cotton candy smoke. When it disappeared, I saw that I was wearing the most beautiful pink dress that I had ever seen. I looked at myself in the mirror and gasped in awe. Thank you, I squealed. The fairy smiled. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Caitlin Donahoe, I said. And I'm Rosetta. The fairy said, now go get your prince, she commanded. I walked out of the room. I walked into a ballroom full of people dressed in the most exquisite clothing imaginable. I didn't think there was any way they all were commoners. James walked up to me carrying a large white dress. He dropped it and his mouth gaped. Suddenly remembered that he had been going to get a dress from a tailor. Who gave you that dress? James asked. The fairy who lives in the Rosebud did. I said, the fairy gave you a dress? He gasped. Yes. I said, and you had no iron to ward her off? He yelled. She was very nice to me. I said. He sounded as ridiculous as my cousin did. We were approached by a handsome young man. I don't think I've seen you before, he said. My name is Caitlin Donahoe, she said to him. I am Prince Finian, he said. Would you like to dance with me? He asked. My heart gave a leap. I would be honored, Your Highness, I replied. We began dancing. So, I have not seen you around here, he said. I am from Fort Myers. I was just traveling to Fernhallow to visit my cousin. I got in a car accident and James gave me a ride to this village to give me a place to stay for the evening. We danced for the rest of the evening, and I promised that I would see him again often. I spent the night in the castle. Finian promised that he would take me to the next village to inquire about a tow truck. After we all ate breakfast, I walked outside to find my car sitting outside the door, good as new. I told Finian that I would come see him often, and I drove away. I plugged my cell phone, whose battery died the night before, into cigarette lighter charger. As I was driving, a notification that said that my mother had left several calls last night came up. I called her back. Hello? She asked. Mom, I am so sorry. I tried to call you, I began, but she interrupted. If you are trying to call me on my dead daughter's cell phone, I will have you know that you are absolutely sick. She hollered. Mom, no, it's me. There was a click on the other end. I drove to my cousin's house in Fernhallow. I called her once I got there. No answer. I drove to her house and got out of the car. I knocked on the door and rang the doorbell. I waited for at least 5 minutes, but no one came to the door. Frustrated, I turned the doorknob and walked in. Inside, I saw my cousin sitting on the couch, sobbing, and heard her talking to my mother on the phone. I told her to always have an eye on horseshoe charm in her car when driving that road. My cousin sobbed. I'm fine. Look, I'm right here. I yelled, but she did not notice me. I walked over and touched her on the shoulder. Still no reaction. Then I noticed a newspaper sitting on the sofa. To my horror, it read Fatal Car Accident on Route 90. There was a picture of police trying to pry my car away from the tree, something I did not remember seeing the night before. The article read, police received a call at 9:00 p.m. last night and traced it to the location of the car. The body inside was identified as Caitlin Donahoe, 32, of Fort Myers. My head was swimming. There was no way I was dead. But there again, I had not thought to question the existence of the old castle either, or how my car was suddenly whole again. A voice behind me said, "Humans, they always blame us for their own deadly accidents, not just because they commit human error when driving over the entrances to the fairy and afterlife worlds." I turned and saw Rosetta standing behind me. "But Dot, how?" I asked. I literally could not think of anything else to say. Then I filled with rage. "You knew?" I yelled. "Yes." "I did. You would not have been able to enter the fairy ring if you were alive," she said. "And everyone at the castle, are they dead too?" I asked. "Yes, them too. But how come you didn't tell me?" "I asked Dot," she replied. "It is against fairy lore to tell someone they are dead. That is something we have to let you figure out for yourself." "But do the villagers know?" I asked. "They did at one point, but as time wore on, they became absorbed into the afterlife just as you will be," Rosetta said. "Now, are you ready to leave? Your family will join you at the ball when their time comes." I thought for a moment. "Yes, I'm ready," I said, and we went back to the village where I married Finian. As the years went by one, my family members came to reside there. We are still there, and will be forever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.